is rapidly emerging as a global data center hub and is projected to see an estimated demand of over 450 megawatt IT capacity across major cities in 2025, while supply addition is expected to reach a 600 megawatt IT. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the ever evolving tech space. And I'm your host, Priya Dialani. Now, in response to this data demand, the data center infrastructure is rapidly evolving to meet these growing demands for security, scalability, and efficiency. These secure facilities are the hidden fortress, safeguarding and processing the ever growing mountain of information that powers India's digital revolution. So, what's the secret behind such significant growth, and what does the future of the data center industry in India look like? Let's welcome Sanjay Motwani, Vice President Asia Pacific, White Space Data Centers with LEGRAND. Hi Sanjay, how are you doing?
Hi Priya. So far so good. Thank you so much for having me here, Priya.
It's a pleasure to have you with us on a podcast today, Sanjay. And of course, we are going to talk about one of the industries that's booming like anything, of course, because of the growth of data that we are witnessing today. But before we dive deeper, into the significant growth and what are the factors, driving the growth, or of course, understanding how the future should be like of the data center industry, we would like to know more about white space data centers that is associated with LEGRAND. So if you can help us understand more about the organization, its specialization, or any particular solution the company is offering.
LEGRAND is basically how we define ourselves as. We are specialists in the electrical and digital building infrastructure. Okay, and data centers is one of the key verticals where we are focusing on. But overall, our approach in whatever product lines we carry is fundamentally to improve lives by transforming the places where we live or work together. And how do we do that is primarily by introducing or launching products and the solutions which are relatively simple, innovative, and in today's environment, obviously sustainable, which is absolutely critical in where we are headed. As an organization, we are 8.6 billion euros. That was our turnover last year. And as an organization, we have nearly 38,000 workforce. Coming specifically back to data centers now account for nearly 20% of our global revenue. So as an organization, we are pretty focused on leveraging the opportunity this segment offers for all of us.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Sanjay. That's really fascinating. It's always great to hear about the unique journey and the focus areas that shape an organization's purpose. And I'm really happy how the company is growing with respect to the numbers that you shared with us. Moving ahead, if you talk about you, Sanjay, you are an industry leader with over 30 years of experience, with an extensive experience in IT, telecom sectors across Asia Pacific and Middle East. So it would be great if you could, tell us more about yourself. How has your journey been till date? What exactly is your role and contribution towards the company, or what are some of the important tasks that you look after at LEGRAND?
Wow, you didn't have to say it so much, 30 plus. I normally try and hide that part, but so yes, I have been a IT, telecom, and a data center person through and through. Got into this space accidentally, but I've gotten into it and enjoying the journey so far in this space. And with LEGRAND and its group, I've been around for nearly 20 years, and it started off with managing India, and has grown now to managing APAC. Initially, the roles were largely with sales and marketing. And now the roles, besides sales and marketing, has also, evolved into the strategic direction, trying to look at as to where we should be in the short to mid-term in this space for LEGRAND. And how I've been doing, I guess I'm still with the company, and company hasn't thrown me out, so I guess I'm doing okay. I don't think we have complaints from each other so far. So yeah, I guess that's about it.
Right. Thank you for that brief intro about yourself, Sanjay. And of course, when we're talking about a leader shaping the company's future, I think what stands out is not just what you do, but why it matters in the broader context of your company's growth and impact. So let's, dive into our theme focus of today's conversation. I mentioned earlier also that the demand for data centers in India continues to rise, and it's driven by factors like increasing adoption of cloud computing, expansion of big data, IoT, AI, and of course, the rapid growth of e commerce and digital transformation initiatives. Now, this demand was fueled by hyperscalers and banking, financial services, and insurance, IT. In fact, I think all service sectors, because all of which, they heavily relied on data center operations for most of their, data services that they needed. So, how would you describe the current landscape of data centers in India? And what are some of the factors apart from, cloud computing or expansion of data? What factors do you think are driving their growth?
It's the other way around, the way you have put it. It's not that the cloud is driving the growth. Cloud is a result because data is being generated. One of the applications, cloud data centers, etc. Now, if you look at it, I would broadly put the growth drivers into three buckets or three pillars. One is the digital economy, which driving of the digital economy, which India has been on for the past few years. And that's contributed hugely to the generation and the volume of data which has happened. Obviously, the infrastructure has to be built to support the digital economy, which is the second pillar, the infrastructure. Infrastructure being built both by the government and the private players. You look at the scope of the network which is available today across the country, even in the remotest of villages. You can see people, watching YouTube videos on their mobile phones, and that also because of the fact that the infrastructure allows you to have access to this connectivity at such a ridiculously low rate, data rates which are available today in our country. And because of these low data rates, the third pillar, therefore, becomes the consumer behavior. It is the consumer. It's like people like you, me, an average person on the street across the country, across all economic strata, who are pretty much spending anywhere between 4 to 7 hours a day on your mobile phone. Forget the corporate environment or the government environment where laptops, etc., are being used. The consumer behavior has really changed the volume of data which we are generating and the type of data which we are generating. And as far as India is concerned, honestly speaking, if you look at it, we are 1.4 billion people. And it's safe to assume that out of those 1.4 billion, 1 billion people have access and are generating data. That's a huge number of people who are doing this. Now, when you want to compare statistics, okay, purely for comparison, in terms of how many megawatts of, we measure data centers in terms of, how many megawatt data center it is. So in India today, we have what you call 1 megawatt per million, whereas China, for example, with a similar population, has about 4 megawatts per million. India generates nearly 20% of the global data which is produced. But in terms of the number of data centers we have, in terms of megawatt capacity, we are only at 3%. So when you look at the gap where we are in terms of the population and our ability to create data, and in terms of the pillars, the digital economy, which is, again, driving us to use more and more, the scope of expansion for data centers in India is tremendous and enormous. We are anywhere looking between mid to high double digits growth year on year for the foreseeable future. So, the landscape is awesome in terms of business and the opportunity it provides. So, it's a great time and place for the data centers growth story as far as India is concerned.
Right. I think that's a very important perspective that you shared, especially when we consider how rapidly India's digital economy is expanding. And like you mentioned, I think I agree with you that it's really clear that data centers are becoming not just infrastructure, but kind of critical enablers for India's digital future. And yes, definitely the landscape looks pretty promising. It's growing year by year. And I think the scope is definitely enormous for the growth, specifically in India. Like I mentioned, mentioned that they are data centers are could be considered more of critical enablers of digital transformation in India. So they are considered as a backbone of digital age because they are powering everything from social media to e-commerce, mobile communications, and the list is never ending. However, traditional data centers consume an enormous amount of power and are major contributors to carbon emissions and environmental degradation. Now, with the increasing focus on carbon reduction, there is a move towards green data centers, which seek to minimize the environmental impact of these facilities while still providing the essential services that power the digital economy. So when we are adopting these sustainable practices and green data centers, they are helping us reduce the carbon footprint and also the operational expenditure, I would say. So how is it critical for India to modernize its energy infrastructure and meet the growing demands of data centers, but with a very adopting an approach of responsible environmental practices?
What you said is true, Priya. I mean, while I feel hurt when you or people use the phrase that data centers are emitting huge emissions and increasing the carbon footprint, but as a percentage, it's relatively still small. Not that I'm trying to defend it, but I'm saying, yes, they do. But it's just that they get talked about more, so they appear, I would say, more bad compared to the others. But still, it is what it is. It's a challenge, actually, if you look at it, Priya. The challenge being, you have consumers on one side who are generating data. It's impacting our lifestyles, both in terms of professional work, entertainment, learning, education, etc., etc. The question is, do you stop that and generate less data so that you consume less power? Or do you continue to be as you are and start consuming and generating more data, rely more on the digital infrastructure? And given the fact that we are talking about AI, etc., coming into play, which are generating more, demanding more power per se. So first is the fine balance between how much should the data center people focus on the business aspect of data center and catering to the customer needs and demands, and how much should they be able to look at the carbon footprint issue. I guess we were on the right track till AI kicked in. Where the data centers globally were targeting to be net zero by 2030. The challenge is AI has completely disrupted that goal. Not that the goalpost has officially been shifted, but I guess unofficially everybody knows that it's being pushed beyond. How beyond, we don't know. Coming to the fact about specifically talking about India in terms of, it is critical. It's not only for India, it's critical for everybody. But the good news with India and for India is that today 50% of the power which is generated in India is generated by fossil fuels. Nearly 30% today is already being done by renewable resources when you look at solar and wind. And then you've got another 10, 12 odd % coming in from hydro. So as far as electricity generation is concerned, the renewable energy, we are on the right track as an organization. I think the larger challenge for India is making this renewable energy available where data centers are coming in. So you would have pockets where the renewable energy exists, but not necessarily everywhere. And as we said before and discussed before, that the network infrastructure is available pan-India. And even in the remotest of corners, we are building data centers, maybe small, but still they are data centers, leveraging the edge side. It may not be feasible for us to bring the renewable resources into every nook and corner of the country where we are setting up data centers. So I think the larger challenge is distribution of the renewable energy rather than its availability. And I think on the availability part, I think India is doing pretty good. And I think we are doing faster than our goals, which we had committed ourselves to as a country. But the way I would look at it is, I think the distribution of the renewable energy is a larger problem, one. And part of the onus I would also shift to the data center people in terms of the people running data centers, in terms of when you're building data centers, how much are they themselves investing in the renewable energy themselves? So it's not a simple, straightforward answer, but we need to do these 3, 4, 5 things. As I mentioned earlier, it's also the first issue is about the balance between business and the environment. The second is it's a distribution, and the third is the onus on the data center people themselves as to how much they want to. So how much can they themselves drive this renewable energy data center aspect.
Agreed. I think I really liked your perspective on particular point that you highlighted, that it's really important how we are focusing on distributing this global energy appropriately and effectively, because I think that is where it eventually boils down to. And it is kind of a balancing act, because one hand we have this incredible opportunity to position India as a global leader in digital infrastructure, and on the other we also have to be responsible to align the growth with the national and global sustainability goals. So I think modernizing the data center technology, leveraging more renewables, or using emerging technologies like AI for energy optimization within the data centers, I think all of this needs to come together as a part of a larger blueprint, is what I feel. Which kind of brings me to my next question. When I was talking about AI, the explosion of big data, it contains everything from you have data around your consumer behavior to financial transactions, health records. So all of this definitely requires substantial storage, computing power, and processing speed. And when all of this data is stored and processed in data centers, it's empowering more insights and analytics that can help businesses drive decisions, predictive models, and even foster innovation. So of course, we know AI is definitely playing an important role in each and every aspect of your life, including data center. So, what role do you think, like these technologies, which are AI, automation, or even edge computing, which is kind of playing an important role in data centers these days? How do you think they're playing an important role in defining the future of data centers in India?
Okay, first, I may be splitting hairs here, but I would not use the word technology for edge computing. Edge computing is only the need to bring the computational ability where the data is being generated or needs to be processed. So it's not a technology per se, and the edge becomes relative for different people. For whom are you referring to? For example, when you look at Microsoft or the big guys, Apple, Facebook, etc., for them moving from a tier one to tier two city becomes an edge. But when you want to look at the consumer applications, I mean, I saw one photograph a year or two ago where I saw an ATM on a boat. Now, from that perspective, the ATM becomes the edge because it is allowing you to be able to process and do transaction on a boat because it was going from village to village. So edge is relative for different people, different organizations, depending upon the space you're operating. That part is the edge part. Now, coming back to the role of AI and automation. AI is both part of the problem and part of the solution. It is a problem because it needs more resources, more power, et cetera, to be able to do its job. But then AI has the ability also, on the other hand, to help you optimize, utilize your infrastructure better. So again, it's a little bit of a catch-22 situation. You use one technology to reduce how you are trying to optimize its use itself. So it's, again, you have to do a fine balancing act, but it is both a part of the problem and part of the solution. Automation obviously helps in improving your efficiencies. It helps you optimize specifically your power consumption. And on the other hand, automation also helps you, how should I say, minimize the human intervention on certain repetitive tasks. And when you're trying to minimize the human intervention on the repetitive tasks, what's also happening is you're minimizing the errors. So therefore, you're also bringing down the probability of, data center crashes, etc. So when you look at AI, automation, and edge obviously is bringing the technology and the connectivity and processing to the remotest corners of the country. And both AI and automation are definitely helping improve efficiency aspect on the infrastructure for data centers. And both of them have to play an absolute critical role. Depending upon where you are in your data center, your life cycle of your data center, what applications you're running, you would use, either or a combination of both to help optimize. But it is a given that you would have to use these to be able to manage your resources better. Without these, you would not be able to do so.
Right, definitely. And I think when we're talking about AI and automation, I think with regards to the data center landscape in India, I think it's not just here to meet the local demand, but also positioning India as more of a global leader in digital infrastructure. And of course, like you said, AI and automation are definitely needed and play an important role in improving the efficiency of the overall data center infrastructure. So I think it brings opportunity, but as well as complexity, I feel, because the way organization leverage these shifts will define not just their operational efficiency, but also how competitive they are in this digital economy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to kind of now address the elephant in the room, which is like sustainability concern, or how environmentally responsible we can be in terms of data center operations. I mentioned about green data centers because they're kind of gaining traction to reduce carbon emissions and even lower operational expenditure. Now, many companies in India are investing in green energy solutions to power their data centers. In September 2022, Bharti Airtel announced that its subsidiary Nextra Data Limited had partnered with Bloom Energy to deploy low environmental impact fuel cells at its data centers in Karnataka. So it is unlocking both cost and sustainability benefits. Now, Nextra currently operates 10 large and 120 edge data centers across India. So, I mean, sustainability is definitely a major focus for data center operators. And, like you also mentioned that it is kind of, we are hyping on it, though it's not contributing that much significantly to the carbon emissions. But what are certain steps do you think companies can take to reduce their carbon footprint?
It's a big elephant.
Yeah, definitely.
But honestly speaking, being a part of the data center industry, I don't know. I feel that, data center people or the industry is being isolated and being pointed more. But as far as reducing carbon footprint is concerned, I mean, everybody has to play a role in this. Everybody has to be responsible. It's not only data centers. It's not only companies. It's we as human beings. Okay, we have to be conscious of how we are, wasting or utilizing the energy which is provided to us. Okay, simple things like, we started off long time back with this concept of putting these timers on red lights, which would tell you that, red light would change in 30 seconds or 45 seconds or 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes, with the expectation that if it's beyond a certain time, you should switch off your car engine and save the fuel from burning and reduce power pollution, etc., etc. But how many of us do that? We don't, right? And that is one of the larger, emission or pollution creating aspects of it. So the point I'm trying to make is that reducing the carbon footprint is not only the responsibility of only data centers. I think its responsibility lies with all of us, everybody in all our spheres of life, personal and professional. That's one. You look at the gig economy today, right? In India specifically, which is taken off crazily. You want everything delivered in 15 minutes or 30 minutes, right? Earlier, we used to go to the market once a week, once in 10 days, pick up our groceries, pick up our stuff, and come back. Today, we just sit at home and order 5 times during the day because it's available and somebody is delivering to you in 15 minutes what you want. I've been in campuses, I've been on sites within India where I see people ordering tea and coffee 4 times, 5 times a day. Now that is burning fuel. That is crazy amount of pollution creating or increasing the carbon footprint. Okay. Sure, it's helping the economy, it's helping generate more data, it's helping the data center. I mean, honestly, it's helping my business, it's helping my company grow, it's helping me grow. But being environmentally sustainable, I think, as I said, I'm repeating myself here, is responsibility for all of us. Okay, it's not a particular segment of the industry. Coming back to specifically on the data centers have to deploy tools which help them optimize. I mean, we discussed briefly earlier also the fact that AI and automation will help do that, understanding where you are wasting energy, understanding how to optimize what resources you have. Definitely is there. And I'm sure you're familiar with this OCP Open Compute project, which is going on, which helps, the hardware is optimized for energy efficiency. I mean, the designs are minimal and modular, and they have a relatively, longer lifespan, and they can be once reused in a different way down the line. So the industry is doing things. The industry is trying to make an effort towards reducing the carbon footprint. But again, it's to see how do you implement it. I may be using open compute hardware because it is energy optimized. But if I don't have renewable energy, I'm still using fossil fuel to run my open compute hardware, etc. I am still not making the full impact. I am reducing to a certain degree, but the carbon footprint is not going. So the first question is the intent. That is the larger issue. All of us have to be responsible. That's the intent. Second part is intent when you take it to organizations and data centers specifically. Yes, there is intent to reduce the carbon footprint. The third is the reality, the availability, A, of technology, B, of power, C, of skill sets to be able to fully leverage what can be achieved. I would say all the ducks are not aligned in a row as of now. We are trying to align them. It's seemingly a relatively longer process than I guess we anticipated or thought it to be. We are on the right path, is all I can say. There's no question of not being done. It has to be done. Inaction is not an option over here. We have to definitely do it. We are doing it. But I'll go back to my original starting point by saying it's the intent of all of us jointly together, both in personal lives and professional lives, to be able to take ownership of reducing this carbon footprint.
Definitely, I agree with you, Sanjay, that it's everybody's responsibility to take their individual steps and ensure the reduction of carbon emissions and reducing the carbon footprint. And it's not just about data centers. And of course, we really have to be cautious about how we are using energy. And I think, we kind of have to fundamentally rethink how the infrastructure, data center infrastructure we are building, how modern we can build it, or how workloads are distributed, or even, technologies like AI, or like you mentioned about edge computing. So I think all of these factors can kind of influence or our energy consumption patterns. So having said that, one last question for you, Sanjay. What are certain trends do you think will shape the future of data centers in India? Or, anything important you would like to highlight that would take place in the coming years and that would play an important role in the data center landscape of India?
India is not different. As far as technology and data centers is concerned, it's pretty much global. Everybody uses similar technologies. Some use it earlier, some use it later. Some of the common talked about technologies which everybody's discussing today is obviously on the cooling aspect, because with more heat being generated because of the increase in compute capacities, etc. So we are obviously discussing and talking about implementing liquid cooling. So that's one thing which is definitely going to be. It's still experimentative. But I believe it's going to take up more momentum in the next couple of years. Obviously, we've discussed a lot on the renewable energy, and renewable energy integration is going to play a major role and focus for all of us. We also discussed AI optimization, which is there. So these are some of the things which are, I would say, talked about and I think are happening. But some of the not so common things which I believe will happen down the line, maybe not in the year or two, is let's say carbon aware computing, which fundamentally means you are moving workloads to more to regions or data centers which have a renewable energy. I may be generating, theoretically speaking, I may be generating data out of Madhya Pradesh, but I may be taking it to Chennai for processing it, because I have the ability to use renewable energy there. So some of the big guys are experimenting with this. So this is what we typically call carbon-aware computing. OCP adoption. There's a lot which is going around. Again, OCP has got to do with availability of renewable energy, which is happening. The other is what we look at is digital twins. We are simulating an entire data center pre-design, where we simulate the workloads and see what we need to tweak to optimize the efficiencies. So I think digital twin may come in faster than anticipated, or digital twin also, even if I'm running my data center today in a certain way, what would happen if I were to make XYZ changes in my data center? How would my data center look and feel in terms of optimization on what can be done, what cannot be done? What else? I guess the other thing is on the security side, because with so much so many data centers coming in and so much vulnerability being there, I think the zero trust architecture would have to be kicking in, where fundamentally you are, enhancing the segmentation and encryption and authentication capabilities on the network and the data center. Yeah, broadly speaking, I think all this will happen. And the other thing which is happening on the side, which is being talked about, is modular nuclear power generation. So as and when it becomes viable and feasible, definitely not in the next 2 to 3 years, but maybe in the next 5 to 7 years, that's a no-brainer. I think that is definitely going to happen. Modular nuclear energy, and I think that may be the way forward 5-7 years down the line.
Right. Definitely. I think the future of data centers is being shaped by growing demands from emerging technologies like AI, IoT, and of course, how can you forget 5G? And as more businesses embrace a digital transformation, the need for high performance computing and robust infrastructure continues to rise. And, like you mentioned about the certain trends, I think these will push the limits of data center, traditional data centers, I would say, and which require more faster and energy efficient hardware and advanced cooling systems. So thank you, Sanjay, for taking out the time and effort to be on a podcast today and helping us understand more about the data center landscape of India specifically. What are some of the key drivers and trends that will shape the future of the industry, and of course how can businesses capitalize on the opportunities presented by the India's booming data center market. So thank you so much. It was pleasure having you with us on a podcast today, and it was lovely chatting with you.
Likewise, Priya. Thank you for chatting with you too. Thanks.
Thank you, Sanjay. So, this is for our listeners. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained some real insights that you can probably apply in your respective industries. Nevertheless, stay tuned for upcoming podcasts, and you can view all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.